What if the most dangerous shadows aren't the ones lurking in the dark, but the ones we carry inside our own minds? In a world lit only by fire and faith, a quiet town on the edge of the known world was about to discover that fear could be more contagious than any disease. It began with whispers, then seizures, then accusations. This is the story of how a spark of paranoia ignited a firestorm of madness, consuming a community and leaving behind a lesson that still haunts us today. This is the story of the Salem Witch Trials. Welcome to Echoes of Time. Before the accusations and the gallows, Salem Village was a place struggling to define itself. In the late 17th century, this was Puritan New England, a landscape of dense forests, harsh winters, and a deep, unshakable belief in God's providence and the devil's constant interference. Life was hard, governed by strict religious codes. The community of Salem was actually two: the wealthier, more commercially driven Salem town, and the poorer, agrarian Salem village. This division bred resentment and conflict. Villagers bickered over land, church leadership, and resources. They saw their hardships, crop failures, disease, and conflicts with Native American tribes not as mere misfortune, but as signs of God's displeasure, or worse, the work of Satan's agents among them. It was a world primed for a scapegoat, a society where the supernatural was as real as the soil they farmed. They believed the devil was actively trying to tear down their city upon a hill, and they were on constant watch for his servants. It was in this cold, tense atmosphere that a group of young girls began to behave strangely, and the stage was set for a tragedy. The story begins in the cold winter of 1692 in the home of Reverend Samuel Parris. His daughter, Betty, and niece, Abigail Williams, started having fits. They screamed, contorted their bodies, and complained of being pinched and pricked by unseen forces. Soon, other girls in the village showed the same terrifying symptoms. The village doctor, unable to find a physical cause, diagnosed them as being under an evil hand. Pressured to name their tormentors, the girls pointed their fingers at three women: Sarah Good, a homeless beggar; Sarah Osborne, a reclusive woman in a property dispute; and Tituba, Reverend Parris's enslaved servant from the Caribbean. While the two Sarahs maintained their innocence, Tituba, likely under duress, confessed. She wove a fantastical tale of a tall man from Boston who made her sign the devil's book, of flying on sticks, and of other witches in the village who conspired with her. Her confession was the spark that lit the fuse. It validated every fear the Puritans held. Hysteria gripped Salem. The afflicted girls became local celebrities, their accusations holding the power of life and death. Special courts were convened. Respectable churchgoers, landowners, and even a former minister were accused. Bridget Bishop, a tavern owner known for her vibrant red clothing, was the first to be hanged. She proclaimed her innocence to the very end, shouting from the gallows, "I am no witch. I am innocent. I know nothing of it." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Over the next few months, the madness escalated. More than 200 people were accused. 19 were hanged on Gallows Hill. One man was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea, and several others died in the squalid prisons. The trials were a spectacle of spectral evidence, where the accuser's visions of a person's specter or spirit attacking them were accepted as proof of guilt. It was a system where innocence was impossible to prove. But here is the twist that is often overlooked. The witch trials didn't just end because people came to their senses. They ended because the accusations went too far. When the afflicted girls, emboldened by their power, began accusing some of the colony's most prominent citizens, including the wife of Governor William Phips, the authorities finally stepped in. The elite, who had been content to let the trials proceed when it was just social outcasts, suddenly saw the danger to their own. Governor Phips ordered a halt to the proceedings and disbanded the special court. He replaced it with a superior court that disallowed spectral evidence. Without the visions and fits of the girls as admissible proof, the foundations of the prosecution crumbled. The remaining cases quickly fell apart, and the accused were released. It wasn't a sudden wave of enlightenment or guilt that stopped the madness. It was self-preservation. The very system that created the hysteria had to shut it down when it threatened the powerful. This reveals a chilling truth. The line between justice and chaos is often protected not by morality, but by power. The legacy of the Salem Witch Trials is etched into the American conscience as a cautionary tale. In the years that followed, the community slowly acknowledged its catastrophic error. Jurors and magistrates issued public apologies. One of the accusers, Ann Putnam Jr., stood before her church and asked for forgiveness, blaming her actions on a great delusion of Satan. The colony held a day of fasting and prayer for the tragedy it inflicted upon itself. The event became a powerful symbol of the dangers of mass hysteria, religious extremism, and the failure of due process. Centuries later, the playwright Arthur Miller used the Salem trials as an allegory for the anti-communist McCarthy hearings of the 1950s in his play, The Crucible, ensuring that the story would continue to resonate with new generations. Today, Salem, Massachusetts, thrives as a tourist destination that both memorializes the victims and confronts its dark past. The trials remind us that fear, when combined with unchecked authority and a desire for scapegoats, can turn neighbors into monsters and justice into a weapon. The echoes of Salem are a reminder that the witch hunt never truly dies. It just changes its name. The question we must always ask ourselves is not whether the witches are real, but who we are willing to sacrifice to our own fears. Thanks for joining us on Echoes of Time. If you want to uncover more stories history tried to forget, don't forget to subscribe.